Breaking news right now. Half of the population of the planet Earth has disappeared. On the positive side, the lines at the Disney parks are now much shorter, traffic is much lighter now, but wait till tonight where we explain it why Russia is to blame for all this. More at 11. So, hi, welcome to End Credit Reviews on an episode of After the Credits on End Credit Reviews. This is Tyler from End Credit Reviews.
And Steven from Steven Lawson Studios.
Yes, and this is our review on Avengers Endgame. The movie that, of course, is one of the absolute most hyped movies probably of all time.
Yep.
I would say. I mean, the movie just sold itself because as soon as the pre-order ticket sales went online, both AMC and Fandango crashed. I know from personal experience trying to get my tickets. Well, for my friends and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. and I heard somewhere that it may have a worldwide opening gross of 900 million.
Oh, that is amazing. Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, so this is our review on the movie itself. So sorry, not Infinity War.
Yeah.
So previously was Avengers Infinity War. And now we have, of course, Avengers Endgame. Now, before we get into the movie, I just wanted to tell you a funny joke
Sure.
that happened recently. A few days ago, I was in a lecture with my professor teaching a history class, and unknown to her, she kept saying the word Endgame in her lecture.
Huh.
And it was when the third time she said Endgame is when I started, noticeably laughing, and she was like, "Why are you laughing?" I just thought it was funny to keep saying Endgame and that movie's coming out soon.
Yeah.
So then, as her lecture keeps on going, she keeps saying Endgame, and more people in the classroom start laughing. And on top of that, one of the last slides has the word Endgame on screen in her presentation.
That is funny.
And she was saying, I've tried more to stop saying Endgame, but I just kept saying it. The marketing for this movie, it knows no bounds, people.
Yeah, or something. I don't know. I actually was a little critical of their marketing campaign for this because it felt a little lazy on the fact of just, you're seeing it because you saw Infinity War. That's kind of what it felt like from the previews.
Yeah, I mean, marketing standpoint, it makes sense. This movie's going to sell itself. I mean, yeah, I wasn't expecting them to say, like, oh, Thanos' ship is this big.
Right.
On sides of buildings, kind of like they did with the 98 Godzilla remake. Yeah, back in the 90s, everyone remembers his foot is this big, and that sort of thing.
Yep.
Anyone's nostalgic about that time period, but like myself.
Right.
All right, so let's get into it. So Avengers Endgame, of course, takes place after the events of Avengers Infinity War, and the characters connect again, and then time goes by, and they're thinking to themselves, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could go back in time like other sci-fi movies and undo stuff? And someone were like, why did I think of that? So they do so. They get Ant-Man's help, and I'm not going to go into categories of who's played by who in that because we'll be here for another hour if I do that.
Yep.
It's just self-explanatory. Just use IMDb as your guide here. Far more credible than Rotten Tomatoes, just FYI.
Truth.
But I digress. And they figure out it's time to use this time travel material to go back in time and take the Infinity Stones before Thanos gets his hands on them. Now, of course, nothing truly ever goes according to plan, especially in the movies. So, what did you think of Avengers Endgame, Steven?
Well, to be quite honest, I enjoyed it, but it was definitely a step down from Infinity War. And that honestly doesn't surprise me, because Infinity War met and surpassed so many of my expectations that from similar experiences of other franchises in the past, it's like, when you hit the nail on the head that hard, it's hard to hit it again and surpass that. And even if you do in a few areas, you'll probably slack in others. And that was definitely still the case for this film. I still enjoyed it, and there was, as opposed to this Thanos focus in the last film, it kind of inverted, where Thanos was still important and this looming shadow that had done this clear psychological harm to the Avengers, but his shadow was kind of past, and then, not to spoil things, but of course, he has to come back into the picture somehow. So, he does resurface at a certain point. But there was much more focus on the team kind of just struggling with their failure and trying to find a way to fix what happened. And not going to spoil what happens because that would be anticlimactic for the people who haven't seen it yet. But I will say that I would say the way that they went about it, people were speculating with all of these intricate theories about using certain stones and things like that. And ultimately, it's a lot simpler than that. It ends up being kind of just, yeah, what you'd expect, and they even joke about it. And that's not to say that there weren't cool things that happened afterward and consequences to their actions, but it was kind of bare minimum for that regard. And then things got interesting towards the end, when we obviously know that in some regard, to undo the damage, they need to collect at least some of the stones for themselves. And how they go about doing that is the biggest case of recycled footage I think we've ever seen so far in these films. And that's fine. I mean, it made sense for the way they were doing it. But ultimately, my problem with it was, and I'm not going to spoil why, but the beginning, the very beginning, was extremely weak for what they did. And it kind of showed a disrespect for what they had built in the last one. And by the end of it, you can say they built it up again, but the balance was so, as Thanos would say, it was not perfectly balanced. It was it definitely lopped a little to the side awkwardly of the heroes, and it's like, okay, but why besides because the writer said so? And that definitely wasn't ideal and made it a step down. I wouldn't say it's by any means a bad film for those reasons, but and in fact, I would say that how they handled, especially the big three being Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, cringe. They, I think they did them a lot of justice, and especially Iron Man and Captain America kind of got a nice bow on the package that has been their career so far. I'm not going to say anything about it, but I'm going to say that what it's clear that they've been a part of this, and they established that very nicely and their legacy in these films, and that was very well handled. But overall, yeah, I would say that it was fun. There was a lot of moments that were pushing fan service, but overall just more, fun and comic booky. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, there was some very, arguably the most impressive ensemble probably put to screen maybe ever, in terms of just how many people, for the people who do watch the films, were on screen all at once. That was kind of remarkable. And I mean, it even dwarfs Infinity War, so that was pretty wild. But yeah, enough of my yapping. What did you think about it, Tyler?
Okay. Well, basically, I do agree with you, Steven, basically on, yeah, the beginning part felt a tad bit anticlimactic in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Middle part felt a little bit like, okay, let's go point A, point B sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, on the whole part of the recycled footage stuff in that, I thought to myself, man, they made Ed Wood really proud.
Yeah.
But in this case, it did make sense because of time travel and that sort of thing, and they did an interesting job of handling that. But yeah, later I do want to talk about some spoilers that I want to get off my chest and
Sure.
that. But yeah, I did like the character interaction. I thought it was well. It's hard to talk about this movie without spoiling it.
Sure.
So I'm just gonna spoil stuff that's at least in the first 30 minutes or so of the movie, or at least stuff you see in the trailer.
Yeah, I would say stuff you see in the trailer is safe, but there's a particular thing you probably shouldn't say.
Like
Um,
Hulk.
no, I'm talking about the purple boy in the beginning.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, well, I just want to say that I thought it was interesting with Hulk being kind of balanced now, because at one point in the comics that did happen
Mhm.
at one point in time.
Yeah.
But also, I gotta say again, one of my favorite characters, Rocket, was in the movie a good amount. So I like it that my favorite character in the MCU has a lot of screen time this time.
Mhm.
In fact, I consider Rocket kind of like, in my opinion, he's sort of in a way the face of the MCU because he's kind of like, well, I know the Iron Man is, but if you think about it, Rocket's the kind of character who would not be well known as he would be to mainstream audiences or as popular he is now if it weren't for what the MCU became in that sort of thing. Like if Rocket was just in his own movie, let alone the Guardians of the Galaxy without the MCU, people probably would not really give him a chance. And I think that's both a good and kind of a sad thing. It just shows how people sadly these days will tend to gravitate towards something that they're familiar with rather than risking something new and different
Sure.
and original, which of course is also the spectrum of Hollywood. Which, by the way, just a quick side note, we saw a pretty much an ensemble of garbage movie trailers
Exactly.
that played beforehand. I was laughing hard during the Hobbs and Shaw trailer,
Me too, man.
and part of me wasn't so sure. Am I laughing because it's so bad, like laughably bad, or am I going insane laughing?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like it broke me mentally.
Arguably, the Thanos snap having the population just for the reason that those movies could go out of business may have been a mercy.
Yeah, and and I also told Steven and make Van Helsing 2 happen.
True.
Yeah, yeah, and anyway, and also bring back Spectacular Spider-Man.
True.
Take a hint, Disney Plus. You saw what DC streaming service did with Young Justice.
Absolutely.
Just saying. Just some free advice.
And Doom Patrol too, right? Or is that something?
That was new
Yeah.
for him.
Okay.
All right, so back to Marvel.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was again a ton of funny quips, one-liners, and the middle part did drag and feel interesting at the same time, and that's why the movie is 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And with the runtime, I'm happy I remember this, but in my opinion, do you like to bring back trends of like 3D and other kind of gimmicky stuff?
Yep.
You know what they should really bring back from the past?
What's that?
Intermission periods.
They should. Yeah, I was surprised they didn't. I had heard a rumor that there might, but
I mean, come on. I think every movie goer, or at least someone who makes movies, who at least been to a good amount of movies in their lifetime, should know that they should care about the bladders of their audience.
yeah.
Okay? Because, and also from the past, old movies had intermission periods that were very long, like The Ten Commandments and Ben-Hur. And I think even that Alexander movie from the 2000s had an intermission period. But I'm thinking to myself, they should bring that trend back. So that way studios don't feel obligated to just cut this part out for running time and that sort of thing and compromise the entire movie. I mean, just look at the director's cut of Troy. That movie is much better than the theatrical cut. And also Watchmen, too.
Yep.
And other movies that, sadly, studios tend to fumble with other movies that get messed up because of that.
Right.
Sort of thing. But at least with the MCU, they have enough control and they don't really tend to mess up like that. But anyway, speaking of dropping the ball, there was definitely a few times where it did, and I want to get into the spoiler part pretty soon, but I just want to say that just FYI, I don't like Brie Larson, and I know I'm one of the millions that don't, so get in line, I guess.
Sure.
And the thing is, like, she's just so unlikable, and I don't know if you've seen the interviews with her and some of the cast members, but you can tell by their body language that they don't really like being around her.
She's got a agenda that she really wants to push. That's pretty clear. And to be clear, I don't necessarily have a bone to pick with her or anything, but I think to anyone honest, it's pretty clear that she's like, okay, I'm here. Here are my rules. Here are the things. Here's my laundry list. And people are kind of just like, oh, great, it's you.
Yeah, some people called her like America's ex-wife.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, and do you know what's a great meme I saw? I don't know if you saw it, but someone made a meme where it showed Scarlett Johansson in a black dress at a red carpet premiere. It said, "What a package looks like on Amazon," and then it showed the photo next to it with Brie Larson in a very similar color dress, and it said, "When it arrives."
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Funny.
But yeah, I think we should transition into spoilers. So
Agreed.
big part. So here's fast forward to this part if you don't want to be spoiled. So here goes. Cuffs are off, folks. Okay. So anyway, I thought it was pretty funny seeing Thor with a beer belly.
That was hilarious. I honestly wasn't expecting Thor to just be a complete slob at this point. And he was especially one of the people I was referring to with psychological damage. And
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was clear even in Infinity War that even though he was in relatively good shape at that point, he was on this breaking point of like, I don't know what's going to happen if I lose this, you know. And so it does make sense for his character that he just kind of gave up, and it was hilarious to see him as this gaming, fat, you know, loser kind of just.
Yeah, but at least he does PlayStation 4, so at least he's got that right.
True. That is a mark of quality, ladies. Just to let you know.
And probably because they got Spider-Man on there too.
It's true. Yeah.
But he probably doesn't want to play it because it just makes him cry, probably.
Right. Oh, man. I didn't even think about that.
Me neither until now. But yeah, back to the Brie Larson joke. I was saying, like, you're not going to be seeing me for a while. And I told Steven, good.
Yeah.
And then you got a big laugh out of that.
Yep. It was great.
Yeah.
I guess the other big spoiler I can say that really ticked me off in the beginning that I was referring to that was disrespectful is Thanos in not even probably 20 minutes, okay, maybe a little more than that, but within the first hour for sure, Thanos gets beheaded like a bitch on his farm, and he's pinned down by I think it was it War Machine?
Yeah, War Machine.
Brie, or
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel, of course. She's of course the one that's first on the scene. And
Owen
Thor,
destroys the ship.
Yeah. And
Power of Mary Sue.
and Thor just like cleaves his head off. It was so ridiculous, and I don't know. Like they explain in the story relatively that, you know, well, I'm destroying the stones and that's why I'm hurt. But it's like, Thanos would not go down like that. I'm sorry. He just wouldn't. And, yeah. So, I mean, you can say that's a nitpicky thing, but it's just, from what's been established already from the other films, he would not be that, resolved with his demise like that. So, I don't know if we want to go with...
He probably would have wanted to bring back Gamora.
Yeah. I mean, that was clearly troubling him in the last one, and it was just like, anyways, we're going to forget about that.
Yeah, but anyway, I just want to say one thing we definitely will spoil on this segment. I felt like easily the best part of the movie was the third act, and it was
for sure.
probably one of the most biggest epic battles. I mean, in a way, it did remind me of the series finale episode of Justice League Unlimited where the heroes and the villains teamed up to fight Darkseid and his, army that was invading Earth. That was kind of really on that scale.
Very much
what I
so.
thought. And it was really cool, and seeing all that happening. Prior to that, we see a moment that it was the first time the movie people started clapping and cheering was when, guess who gets Thor's original hammer? Who's worthy of it? Captain America.
Yep. We all saw the signs coming at some point, and it finally happened.
It was like, oh.
And that was great. And also, when the other characters are finally brought back into the equation, as we knew was going to happen in some capacity at some point, Captain America finally says, "Avengers assemble."
Yes.
And that was another thing that was pretty
People
satisfying
went crazy
for
with
people.
that.
Yep.
Yep, it was cool, a cool battle until the the moment an advocate for Me Too probably jumped in and said, "We must have this one moment," or maybe Brie Larson. Maybe, I don't know, maybe gave the Russo brothers a special lap dance of some kind or whatever, and said, "You gotta have a scene where all the women are on screen."
God. And it was literally all women. There was no men, even though, like, even logistically, there are, I mean, Mantis was always with other, just Drax, for example.
Yeah.
And she was just separate from every
What did Mantis do during the entire battle?
Nothing. She was just there going, yeah, like, I don't know. But she was there to kick names and take ass.
Yeah, no, maybe she could call me, but but anyway, and yeah, it was so cringy about that brief moment, mercifully short, by the way, is that it's a very male-dominated battlefield.
It's true.
So the part that all these big female characters just so happen to be in this one spot of a battle was just like, come on. And then, of course, Pepper Potts is an Iron Man costume now.
That I couldn't believe. That
deal
was
with
just,
it.
Yeah, that was so... so when was this established at all?
Yeah,
really?
I agreed, yeah. That was a big flaw in the writing during that one part. They should have said, "Oh yeah, Pepper, here's my Iron Man suit to you. I may not be back, so here's to protect our daughter."
Yeah.
That would have made sense. That would have sufficed so much and said, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just writing 101, that's all.
There were several moments in this that, I mean, talking about Professor Hulk and stuff like that, I mean, they kind of just didn't write things. They're like, so time passed and this is just them now. And I really am not opposed to that form of storytelling. Actually, not to relate this in more ways than this. But I think, for example, the Transformers movies have a lot of this. Wait, so what happened? Don't worry about it. It's been 5 years. Like, it felt kind of similar to that, where they just let things live. And certain questions about, like, okay, so a lot of stuff happened, apparently. They just don't answer it.
Yeah.
And that's not inherently the worst to me for how much they're dealing with, but there were certain things where, yeah, they really should have answered. And, like, the main one for me was, what the hell? Why are all the Asgardians okay now? Like, we saw their fleet destroyed, and then it's like, yeah, we're in New Orleans, what of it? Like...
New Orleans?
Yeah, or wherever that was,
I think that was like Scotland or Scotway.
my point was it was a marshy town sort of situation. And it's like, so I thought you were just straight genocided when Thanos implemented the Third Space Reich in your living room.
In Ragnarok with Hell, was it?
Yeah, Hela, and then... the Black Order, came on and hammered him, so...
Yeah, but yeah, anyway, but yeah, I do agree that, yeah, there's some noticeable story problems, but I will say that there's a few characters that get rightfully send-off, it was handled very well.
Absolutely.
Some of the best send-offs of any comic book superhero. Of course, seeing Iron Man is the one that delivers the final blow, gets his hands on the Infinity Gauntlet, and snaps his fingers in his last line of the first Iron Man movie, which I thought was a nice nod to. And yeah, he sacrificed himself.
He did.
In a way, it was kind of like the first Iron Man movie, what they could have done with it. But also, remember when Pepper was supposed to die originally in Iron Man 3?
Yep.
And then Mary Sue powers activate?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, very anticlimactic, and just low-key, I don't like Iron Man 3, but...
Yeah. No,
anyway.
I will say, though, his their kid, which is also a spoiler, you see their kid in this, she's adorable.
Yeah.
Such a cute little girl.
Yeah, and the other one I would say easily would have to be Captain America. That was the
Oh
one
yeah.
I really liked this character, and in retrospect, I would say the first Avenger is probably the most underrated movie in the MCU,
I wouldn't
just
go that
in
far, but
retrospect. But the thing is that I really loved what they did with the character at the end. They were saying that, okay, Captain America, just if he could go back in time, he's like, I want to be able to live my life with a woman that I fell in love with and just have a normal life without just risking my life being a hero and that sort of thing. And besides, the world was fine without me for 70 plus years.
hmm
So he decided to do that. And he was like old and that sort of thing. But the thing is, I really liked what they did with that at the end. It just felt very satisfying.
I agree.
And there is something at the end, but it's just a sound, and it's not worth saying for. It's
It's
just
not. It's Iron Man.
banging on an anvil. What is
Yeah.
that supposed called?
Whatever it is, it's from
The
in the
first
cave
one.
when he was making his suit.
Yeah, for the first
For the
time.
first time.
But the
So
thing is, like, you couldn't tell me it could have been a sound of Wolverine's claws coming out, or maybe a flame, like, flame on, Fantastic Four.
they definitely blew a chance to hint at a new Avenger coming in. They really tried.
Or, yeah, or what's next? I mean, come on, maybe some people are speculating Galactus could be the next big threat.
Mm-hmm.
So come on, Silver Surfer, you're already in space, so why not? You introduce the Skrulls, why not give us the Fantastic
For
Four
sure.
and that sort of thing? All right, so I think it's time for us to sort of. Oh yeah, one last thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I think Steve and I are both kind of dissatisfied with the fact that Black Widow was the one that was the sacrifice to bring the Soul Stone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I understand it because it was in the situation between her and Hawkeye, and it's like honestly, both of you could go, and who gives a shit? But
I mean, at least Black Widow is excellent eye candy.
yeah, there's that, and I mean, in the story, it's clear Hawkeye had a family, had, and
Oh.
before they ended up in the ashtray.
Oh yeah, I just want to say that I bet the stock of Dyson vacuum cleaners skyrocketed after Infinity War because so many ashes went in.
Yep, that would be hilarious.
Celine Dion's single "Ashes" reached #1 for years.
But um, but yeah, what were you saying?
But yeah, I just felt. Oh yeah, one last thing before we wrap it up for our ratings, which we
Mhm.
should pretty soon,
For sure.
is there's a part in the trailer that was not in the movie.
Mhm.
It was a part where Black Widow's practicing and shooting and that sort of thing with her gun. A target
Yeah,
wasn't in the movie.
that was dumb.
Maybe it was a deleted scene
Mhm.
in that. I mean, I do like the weird trailer edit. That those trailers, that guy edits movie trailers to make them look funny and weird.
Mhm.
He does like really excellent editing skills,
He does.
like some of the best I've seen on YouTube.
Mhm.
And it's basically it shows Black Widow like trying to shoot the targets, but she keeps missing consistently. Hey, maybe I don't know. Maybe that's what it would be like if Scarlett Johansson really did try to shoot a gun.
Maybe I don't
Because a
know.
lot of actors don't really know how to pull off a lot of that stuff in real life. I mean,
Right.
I think Matt Damon admitted himself that he can't pull off those, fight, martial art moves by himself. Really, that's just a choreographed dance. He
Who
says.
could have imagined that Matt Damon can't beat actual special agents? Who would have thought?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. So anyway, what did you give Avengers Endgame? I almost said Infinity War, folks.
oh yeah.
Endgame, Steven.
Well, I've been thinking about it, and I mean, I gave my speech on the soapbox already, so I won't linger too long. But I mean, Tyler made a lot of good points about it being a bit too long in the middle. I think that the beginning was pretty weak, and I mean, the writing in places was not the best, but overall it carried fine. It felt to be a very much more Marvel movie in contrast than Infinity War did, almost to make up for it. And so that definitely puts it a step down in my book. But the third act was pretty darn intense and cool still, and that can't be stated enough. So With that being said, I would give this somewhere in the area of probably an 87% out of 100 if I were to give it a grade. Because not quite A for some of the decisions, but they made up a lot of traction towards the end, which kept them in, positive waters overall.
Okay. Well, personally, I mean, the movie, a movie will leave an emotional impact on the audience when at the end of the movie you hear so many people, well, mostly women, crying at the end.
Yep.
Again, Brie Larson will probably say, "Is that a personal attack?" Yeah, take a shot every time I take a jab at Brie Larson, folks. New drinking game. But the thing is, it really just shows how much you care for these characters and how so many movies you've seen them in that's hard to, in a way, separate the actor from the role. In a way, it's sort of similar to Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, or earlier on in my favorite movie franchise with the Universal Monsters, how it's hard to really separate Lon Chaney Jr. from the character of Larry Talbot, the Wolfman, and how many times he played that character in so many movies,
Sure.
in a way. And also, yeah, big ensemble cast, really excellent action, some cool stuff. I'm like, yeah, that was awesome. They did that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
But there are some noticeable flaws with the movie that do stick out like a sore thumb. That's hard to ignore. And maybe there'll be some kind of defeminized cut of this, kind of like the Last Jedi defeminized fan edit, where the movie was like an hour shorter in that sort of thing. But it won't be that much shorter if you had to re-edit this thing down.
Right.
But anyway, the movie was very enjoyable. In ways, I was kind of disappointed, but in some ways, my expectations were exceeded. So as for Avengers Endgame, I would give it 3 stars out of 4. Now the thing is, I was debating on 3 or 3.5 for Infinity War, but yeah, I settled on 3.5 for that one. But for this one, I would say a little bit of a tad bit down.
Definitely.
So I still think it's pretty good. Definitely recommend it. Maybe hit the bathroom when the Me Too parade starts coming on screen.
I think that's mostly in the third act, but
Yeah.
yeah, still.
Yeah. So anyway, this is Tyler from Anchor Reviews,
And Steven from Steven Lawson Studios.
and we hope you enjoyed this episode of After the Credits on Anchor Reviews, and we hope to make a lot more in the future. Please like and subscribe.